How's it going, everybody? This is Brian for Pop Culture Crossing, and today we are talking about the 1966 spy action movie Our Man Flint. So, Our Man Flint was released in the same time frame as the Sean Connery James Bond movies. So, if you enjoy those movies and their tone and feel, then you may want to give Our Man Flint a check. So, this movie focuses on a nefarious organization trying to take over the world. Surprise, surprise. However, here the organization is called Galaxy, and the method through which they want to control the world is through controlling global weather patterns. So this element feels unique, and Galaxy provides a public demonstration. Somehow they get, live video feed at super remote parts of the world, but never mind. And they demonstrate just how effectively a individual, or here a group, can control the entire world when they master the weather. So because of the magnitude of Galaxy's threat, the good guys operating under the organization ZOE, or Zonal Organization for World Intelligence and Espionage, are really left with no other choice than to send in their best man for the job. So the ZOE members vote, and they decide to send in their agent Derek Flint. Much to the chagrin of the head of ZOE, his name is Cramden, who has a previous history with Flint and knows that Flint is a character known for being bullheaded and arrogant. So all these elements make for a good action film. Now, the movie's pace is pretty moderate for the first two acts. They do spend a little bit of time at the beginning showing Cramden and his ZOE associates trying to recruit Flint, who doesn't easily join their mission. It takes some convincing to help save the world. But once he does join, that's when the adventure really starts. Now, I say the pace was consistent for the first two acts. That's because in the third act, the pace, the tone, as well as narrative elements really shift. And I personally was not a big fan of this. It almost feels like a different movie for the conclusion of the movie. And I didn't really like that. It really hits you out of left field. But I'll have more details of that at the end of the movie in a small little spoiler section. So in regard to tone, the tone of the movie overall is very cookie-cutter 1960s retro spy movie. In this case, you have the malevolent organization trying to take over the world, and for some reason, as it always seems to be, all the good guys and their agencies and their agents are incompetent, and it comes down to one individual to save the day, or in this case, to save the world. Now, Flint, like Bond, is a womanizer, and however, Flint as a character is way more grandiose and ostentatious than Bond. His penthouse is flamboyantly decorated. He has nude artwork, bright colors. He seems to like animal print, but he can also change the artwork at the flip of a switch if his guests are offended. But the main thing here is that Flint actively lives with four other women. He hasn't just fooled around with four other women like, say, Bond or some of these other spy archetypes have. But Flint actively lives with them. And I'm not saying that's a good thing or a good attribute of Flint's by any means, but it definitely sets Flint aside from Bond and some of these other spy characters. Now, the production design in Our Man Flint is very well done, and it's impressive at what they were able to do. As with any spy film, you want to have a lot of fun spy gadgets and tools, and the ones in Our Man Flint are very fun to watch, and they're well realized. And they don't feel derivative of other spy movies. They really stand on their own and help create the unique identity that is Our Man Flint. Additionally, the dioramas and set design for some of the modeling and stuff, especially in the scenes depicting the weather disasters directed by Galaxy, are very impressive. The the modelings and the dioramas there look very good, and they still hold up surprisingly well today. And I can only imagine what it was like in the mid-60s watching them on the big screen. So in terms of acting, James Coburn's portrayal of Derek Flint is spectacular. He really does assume the character, and when you're watching the movie, you don't see James Coburn, you see Flint for the character Derek Flint. And I had previously been exposed to James Coburn in movies from other genres, namely The Great Escape and The Magnificent Seven. So seeing how easily and smoothly he was able to absorb this spy type of a character was really impressive, and just shows how versatile of an actor Coburn was. Lee J. Cobb portrays Cramden, and he does a great job with that character as well. You really empathize with Cramden throughout the movie, just with the way that Flint treats him, and he's kind of a jerk and writes him off. And you really start feeling kind of sorry and siding with Cramden more often than not. Now, in terms of antagonists, these are divided into two groups. So you have the first group, which are really the main henchmen, or the main antagonists who are actively trying to thwart Flint. And these are Gila, Malcolm Rodney, and Hans Gruber. Yes, that's right. There's a Hans Gruber character in the mid-1960s. And they're portrayed by Gila Golan, Edward Mulhare, and Michael St. Clair, respectively. These characters are all pretty well done. Hans Gruber's the weakest of the three, I would say, just because he isn't around as long as the other two. But they're all portrayed pretty well, I would say. Now, the second group is the main the main galaxy heads, and they're three scientists. And they are Dr. Schneider, Dr. Krupov, and Dr. Wu, portrayed by Benson Fong, Rhys Williams, and Peter Bracco. And they do a good job. They pop in and out of the first two acts, mostly to taunt Zoe and to show their use of the weather systems. But they have a bigger role in the third act, and they get way more screen time there. Now, Daniel Mann, it's hard to say how he does directing, really. I wish he would have been much more intentional in alluding to the other intentions of Galaxy. But because he did not, it just hits you out of nowhere when it happens. It's hard to tell if this was the intention, just to be a big blindside surprise. I kind of have a feeling that it wasn't supposed to, just because of how dramatic the shift really is when you get there. But, oh man, I just wish that he would have helped there been better setup for that. And, you know, it's hard to say if it's really the script or the directing to blame, but definitely I think Mann could have done more throughout the shoot to say, hey, let's help set this up more so it doesn't just surprise everyone and, you know, leave everyone wondering, wait, was this the right movie I came to see? Because all of a sudden it's super different than it was just 10 minutes ago. So in the end, if you're a fan of the retro spy action movies, I would definitely recommend checking out Our Man Flint. But if you don't like 60s retro dystopian movies, I would probably recommend you stay away from this. That's because that's the shift that it takes in the third act, and because it's the third act, the movie ends on that note, so you have that type of taste when you leave the movie. And it really is the pretty much the entire third act. I remember looking at the clock when I was watching it, thinking, oh, it's okay, we just have about 15 more minutes of this and then it's over. But no, it was like 40 minutes. So keep that in mind, but I'll let you be the judge for yourself there. So, have you seen Our Man Flint before? If you have, let me know in the comments below or at Twitter what your thoughts were about the movie. Did you think that the third act twist was as dramatic as I thought it was, or did you see it coming? If you haven't seen Our Man Flint, let me know if you're still on the fence on whether or not you want to see it or not. and we'll keep the conversation going there. And thank you for watching this review. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe and follow. Thanks. Bye. Okay, so you're still sticking around for the spoiler section, so let's get into this. So, the third act, Flint goes to Galaxy Island, which is the main headquarters of Galaxies, and here everything becomes very retro, sci-fi, and dystopic, and it becomes like that very quickly. So while there, it becomes evident that not only does Galaxy want to control the weather or use the control of the weather to control the world, but they want to create a utopia, and it's a hedonistic utopia. And in doing so, they brainwash and program people through social engineering. Now, this is especially bad for the women, as they are referred to as pleasure units, and they are given identification numbers, and they're conditioned to please anyone. And so that was a very dramatic shift, and it really just, like I said in the non-spoiler section, it changes the tone, the pace, narrative elements, and the genre itself. So I personally was not a big fan of this. I wish they would have kept it as a more traditional 60s spy film instead of going this decidedly more sci-fi route. But, you know, I rewatched it and they did not allude to it at all. So it does just jump out at you. And, you know, I can understand that Galaxy wants to use the weather for a dual purpose to A, control the world, and B, then create this, you know, nice paradise utopia. But that just really wasn't communicated until the very end, and at that point I felt like it was too late. So that's just my opinion, but let me know your thoughts on this section.